Welcome to the Good Leadership Podcast, where we explore the stories, strategies, and insights of thought leaders who inspire us to think differently and lead better. In today's episode, this is a second part of my conversation with Chris Littlefield, a global expert on workplace culture and employee recognition. In our last episode, we explore how leaders can retain their best people through meaningful stay conversations. Today, we're shifting gears to talk about something just as critical: how to intentionally design a team culture where people feel valued, engaged, and connected. Chris is going to share practical strategies for building a culture of appreciation, recognizing employees in ways that truly resonate, and ensuring that culture evolves rather than stagnates. So whether you're leading an in-office, hybrid, or remote team, if you're a leader looking to create an environment where people don't just work, they thrive, then this episode is for you. Enjoy. Welcome to the Good Leadership Podcast, where we explore the stories, strategies, and insights of thought leaders who inspire us to think differently and lead better. Through candid conversations and expert perspectives, we dive into the challenges, breakthroughs, and practical lessons that shape exceptional leadership. Let's move to the employees. And a lot of employees struggle to share what they're proud of because they feel like it's, bragging, it's being arrogant. But what can leaders do to really make this practice feel more natural and comfortable for their employees?
I think stop using the term recognition and appreciation. And the reason why, and it seems counterintuitive, but if we just ask questions and engage with people, and we draw out and we intentionally ask questions like in reflective and you don't need to say, what do you want to be recognized for? Because that would creep people out. And if you were to go today and try that with a family member or employee, they'd think you're dying or you just came back from a IMS program, right? And it's like, oh, you just learned something. So you set the context, said, you know what, this is a little bit strange. I heard this in a podcast or in a workshop that I attended, and I'm just curious. I don't see the majority of what you're working on. What's something you're proud of? What's something I don't see that you're working on? And you use just questions to draw people out. And inside what people talk about, they tell you what they care about most. And so if we can draw that out and then just reflect back what we heard, it's going to have people feel recognized. And I think it's just as leaders creating intentional moments where we help people or invite people to talk about those things. And then what tends to happen is on teams when there's a high level of psychological safety, then people tend to not have a problem sharing what they're proud of. Because we have enough of a relationship, we know who each other are. We know that, hey, you're in my corner and you're cheering on my successes. And as a leader, we want to share that. We want to share, hey, did you see so-and-so just got this promotion? Hey, let's all send them notes on our internal chat. And I think where leaders shoot themselves in the foot is if somebody else gets recognized within our company, maybe another department or division, when we gossip about them and they go, they don't deserve it, that right there kills people sharing. And when we accept the accomplishments that we do, then we also send the message that that's okay. And I could go on for 2 hours answering that question, but I think the big last piece that I want to add to that is just a lot of my work is walking people through an experience to kind of reframe what we've been trained our whole life around humility. And there's a misconception that humility, especially with folks who have been trained throughout their faith or their belief to be humble, like pride is a deadly sin. Is that, am I using the right term? Charles, help me out here. Sure. And there's really great work from a woman, Jessica Tracy, who has a book called, Take Pride, I think it is. And she breaks out pride, which she says is one of our fundamental emotions, just like sadness and anger and fear are. That pride is a natural emotion, but there's two different ones. There's hubristic pride, which is, let me tell you how great I am. That's enough about you. Let's talk more about me, where we think that we're being that cocky kind of salesperson or politician. And then there's authentic pride where, hey, I have done so much work to get to where I got to get that project over the line. I did not sleep for the last 3 days, and that is not a healthy thing to be doing, but I got it done, and I got to where I got to because the work that I did or the work that we did, and I'm proud that we did that. And that's authentic pride. It's getting present to, it's not, I didn't accomplish this because I'm innately great. I accomplished this because I put the work in to do it, and I know you put the work in as well. And so I think it's that, and then it's also just reframing pride to be something that we also do together.
An important distinction you make on both sides of that, and I think a lot of leaders get both that humility part wrong as well as the pride part wrong.
And I think with the posting, it's funny because you shared that, and I think of one organization that I worked with, and there was two different leaders in the same organization. They were both senior leaders, and before I go to do a program, I'll often go look at what are those senior leaders sharing.
Right.
And it was really interesting because one of them called themselves an inspirational leader, and anybody who labels themselves an inspirational leader online usually isn't an inspirational leader. People tend to label you that. Right? They just said, hey, in the forefront or whatever it is. And then the person who labeled themselves an inspirational leader, all of the posts were about their successes. And the other leader within the same organization, and by the way, I worked with them, and people talked to me on the side about this leader and the way that they, were treated. And two people decided they wanted to leave the company because of this leader. Then let's go to the other leader in the same department who everybody loved and loved working with this person. All of their posts online were sharing the successes and the pride of other people on their team and their organization. And so when we share the success, we can be proud of what we did, but let's start with being proud of what other people did. And that person,
Absolutely.
Every post was about, hey, I visited this location and this is the amazing work that such and such did. I'm so proud of them and all the effort that went in behind the scenes to be able to do all that work. And I can't tell you how amazing our employees are at serving our customers. And so those two people, right? One of them has you feel like you are the success, and the other one has you feel like they're the success. Right. And so the difference between that, if you are sharing other people's greatness and lifting them up, and I think when leaders are, I work a lot kind of training senior leaders, and I think part of them is taking ownership of our culture. And part of that is learning how to put our employees at the heart of our success in every communication that we have. That employee that, hey, this result, and I live in Washington, D.C. I've lived here for the last 4 years, and I was walking through the mall in Washington, D.C. around the Washington Monument one day, and I always see the Washington Monument like glowing at night when I come into the city, and it's just kind of against the backdrop of the dark sky, and you see it glowing. But the thing that I never noticed until I was walking around one day, I walked by this tree, and all of a sudden I saw these huge spotlights hiding behind the tree that light up the Washington Monument. There's 4 of them back there. And it just reminded me of so much. We see the leader kind of glowing on the top. We see this kind of glowing monument that is our company and the representation of our company. But the reason why it's glowing is the lights that are shining on it.
I love that.
And so as leaders, what we want to do is we may be the one that is the symbol of the work and the outcomes of our company, but the ones that are making us shine are our people. And so we need to turn the light back onto them, and we need to shine light on them because they need to know it's the energy that they're putting in, it's the work they're putting in, it's the things that they're doing every day that are actually the things that are having us shine.
Well, let's talk about remote teams, because your book, you have a lot of great activities that remote teams can use to really get more engaged, build a stronger culture. First, let's maybe unpack those 4 rules of successful remote team activities, because I know a lot of leaders struggle with the hybrid, the remote teams, and how to keep them engaged. But I love some of these activities, and the rules that really start that book out with, I think, can be transformative to leaders.
I wrote this book in the middle of the pandemic. This was not a book that I ever thought I was going to write, but the pandemic hit. I work as a speaker. The industry completely disappeared. And what I realized is I ran just a couple workshops because as a person who my background is in facilitation and helping people connect, I wanted to just put resources together when people really needed it. So I got this out super quick. And the 4 rules that I kind of shared in the beginning is that in our interactions, we always want to first start with connection before content. And that idea of just kind of like when we hopped on the call of just asking, hey, what were you doing 5 minutes before this meeting? What it does is it slows us down to just level and get on the same page. We're all coming from something, going to something. So just by asking that question, what were you doing 5 minutes before this meeting? It just slows us down and has us connect as human beings. And people, I don't have time to do that. And so that's where it comes into the second rule, which is what I call the 1/6 rule. So for every hour of meeting time, 1/6 of it should be used for relationship building. So if it's a 1 hour meeting, 10 minutes. If it's a 2 hour meeting, 20 minutes. If it's a 3 hour meeting, that is inhumane. No one should have to sit through a 3 hour virtual meeting. And for every 6 meetings, one of them, so if we have a weekly meeting with our team, about every 6 meetings, we want to use one of those just to talk about how we're working together. And that may be just doing a learning activity together. That may be watching a TED Talk and having a conversation, or just stepping back and taking time to celebrate some of our recent wins and the progress that we're making. And so that's just a general rule of thumb. And people think, I don't have time to do this. And the other day, I did this with a client. We got on, we went around, we answered one question, like, what's one thing that made you smile recently? And I looked at the time, it took us 4 minutes. It didn't even take us the full 10 minutes. And then we were connected, we were aligned, and you'll have a much more productive meeting. And if you set that rule, everybody knows we're going to take the first 10 minutes and then we're going to do the work that we need to get done. The one caveat I will say is that sometimes working with other cultures, I've worked with several French companies recently, and sometimes culturally, they need to get the work done, and then there's the socializing at the end of the conversation. So you may use that 10 minutes or that 1/6 of your time at different times. Now, the next rule is that we want to have variety or surprise. So one of the activities in the book is what I call freeze. Is sometimes we just want to mix it up a little bit, and I did that on a call with a client. I didn't tell them ahead of time, and they were just like, and we had I think 1,000 people on the call, and they're like, oh my God, he's frozen. And so one is we want to mix things up. Is people get bored. I'll never forget a person in the audience at a conference I was at was talking about, like, it was the time when people were saying that, like, drawing and coloring was good for our mental health. And she's like, well, we had a coloring station and people used to come to it, and now nobody comes to color anymore. I'm like, how long have you been doing it for? And they're like, 2 years. And it's like, no one's going to do the same thing over. No one wants to eat chocolate cake every single week. We need variety. We need surprise. So we want to mix it up. And that's why I created the book with just a bunch of different things to just mix it up. And it can be anything from playing a quick game to just asking a question. And one of the things in the book is I think I include like 35 different meeting questions you can use. You don't need to play a game. Just bring a question that sparks a smile on people's face. Like, you can do another check-in that I like to do is this week, if you were to rate where you're at using a weather report, what would be the weather report of how your last week went? If it's Thanksgiving, what Thanksgiving food best represents your mood right now, right? Anything, like, just do a theme. What Super Bowl food represents how you feel the day afterwards? I don't know. Just mix it up, but bring play. And if you're not the kind of leader who's good at doing this, invite other people on your team to do it. And I think we forget that when it comes to, like, training and development, many times the best training we can give is to put our people on learning missions. Hey, you know what? You want to get better at leading? I want you to lead our next meeting. Here's the 3 things I want you to do. I want you to share the agenda ahead of time, share it with other folks. I'm going to let people know that each one of you is going to lead one meeting once a month. And I want you to use whatever creativity you have to be able to do that. And I'm here to support you. And send them out, and forget that those opportunities to lead are actually the things that have us feel valued and help us feel like we're learning and growing.
Amazing. And then that fourth rule is really right around consistency and ritual, although it seems kind of contradictory to the above rules.
Yeah, and so the consistency in ritual is there's certain things that we do want to do on a regular basis. So back to the recognition work, if you ever watch the show The Office, they have like the Dundee Awards, where it's like these joking awards, and every year people complain about doing it, and then they decide to cancel it, and everyone freaks out that they're going to cancel it, because those rituals are those things that we can count on. It's like when a leader has a standing one-on-one with their people, and then they cancel it, and that employee had something that they wanted to share, and they knew that moment where they were going to be sharing it was going to come up. And so that ritual gives people that consistency that I know I have a space where something's going to happen. So some that I recommend is what I call a small victories practice, which I learned from a group process expert friend of mine, Glenn Johnson. And he does this in a group of speakers. Every single week, he posts the question, what's your small victory this week? And it's become such a ritual that when he doesn't post it in the group, all of us that are in that group are like waiting for someone to post it because you want to share, hey, I just had this big win, I just sold this contract, or I just delivered this awesome keynote, or I got this article accepted into HBR, whatever it may be. And every week people are lifting each other up and cheering people on and sharing their small wins. And it may be, hey, I didn't have a third glass of wine last night. Well, maybe not. I don't know. Right. But it can be anything from that to I finally sent this email that had been avoided, or I had this conversation with my friend that I've been putting off for years. And we forget that it's those moments where we get to share what's going on that nobody sees that has us lifted us up. Another one is just getting in the ritual of doing shout outs. Who's somebody on your team, on another team, who really did something great in the last week or really supported you? And then you use different questions. And I try to give people those questions in my workshops and in the book, just questions to ask, because those questions just crack open a window into people's worlds and the amazing things that are going on in organizations that we don't see. And another ritual that I just learned about recently in a workshop that I was doing that I absolutely loved is a leader told me, and he goes, and he works with all these engineers. It's like, these are not folks who like share about themselves. And he goes, at the end of every week, he goes, I just got in the habit of asking 3 questions, which I took those and turned them into the 3W check-in. Is at the end of the week, he just asked, he goes, tell me one win you had in the last week. What's one wall you're up against? So some challenge that you're facing, and what are your plans for the weekend? And people can share as much or as little as they want. And he goes, it usually takes us maybe 15 minutes to all go around and share that. And I love that because it's one, celebration. We're learning about the great things that people are doing. Wall, we're learning about the challenges that people are facing. And we're all understanding, and people can ask, hey, next week I may reach out to you, Charles. I'm stuck on this project and I'd love to get your input. I know you did one similar and I'd love to hear how you broke through. Okay, great. That person knows. Or, hey, I'm just struggling. My spouse is deployed right now and is out of the country, and just want to let you all know that I'm up against it because I'm a solo parent for the next 6 weeks. I don't know, just an example I hear. And then the third one, that weekend, what people do in their free time tells us a lot about what's most important to them. My kid has got a soccer game this weekend, or we're going to go skiing, or you know what, I asked this recently and someone was like, well, got to go take care of my mom who's got dementia right now. And that one little line, if I intentionally remember that, say, hey, you know what, I know you're going to check in on your mom. How's she doing? I actually didn't know that was going on for you. Yeah, it is. It's something I'm dealing with right now. Well, if I can support you in any way, let me know. And as a leader, if I intentionally remember those little details that people share in all of these little interactions, and I listen for what matters most to them, then I'm going to be able to support them, to give them the tools, resources, mental and emotional support that they need most to be at their best. And if they do, they'll probably look at me and say, I'm one of the best leaders they ever had. Not that that's the goal, but people tend to stick around when they're having a great experience.
I love those facilitation tips. They work great for virtual, remote, in-person meetings, and it gets back to this common theme that we've been talking about: the recognition, the appreciation, showing your employees that you care for them, and really connecting them in a deeper way to have that stronger culture. And you give so many great activities in the book. Just that things that that are common sense, but you just don't know. To get to know each other. I like the activity "My World, Your World" to help people better understand each person's world outside of work. You kind of mentioned on that. The M&M question game was one of my favorites, that each one picks a different color M&M from the bag, and based on the color, they have to answer a certain type of question, right? So if it's red, what's your most embarrassing moment at work? So it makes it fun, it makes it interesting. And like you said, it shows that connection, because I think more than ever before, people are looking for that connection. We're in a loneliness pandemic. They
Yeah.
want networking opportunities, connection points, even if they're remote with their employees.
Yeah, and if I can, like, one moment that stuck out for me the most in when I was doing my cross-border work is, here's 2 groups of people who really don't want to be together, or they're really nervous to be around each other. And I'll never forget, on like day 2, we were doing like kayaking, and this huge guy from Azerbaijan kind of paddled up to me and he's like, hey, can you do more of those activities tonight? Because it's real awkward. We don't know what to talk about, and it really helps us just connect. Many times people do want to connect. They just want someone to do something to create the invitation to start those conversations. And once they get going, we as leaders can step back and let those conversations keep rolling.
But you're right. It's important for the leader to take that initiative and start the ball rolling and build that momentum. And hopefully, once that happens, then I've seen it as well myself, that it just kind of continues on and it builds that strong culture. Well, as we're wrapping up today, Chris, we've talked about so many great topics and great strategies. Is there one thing you like to leave our listeners with, one practical takeaway that they can start right away, maybe in terms of first, the recognition piece, how they can get better at showing recognition to their employees, and then we'll move into maybe one or two other areas.
Yeah, I think the first one is just pay attention over the next couple of weeks. Pay attention to how people respond when you recognize them. I know if you had Chester on here as well, he often talks about the 5 pennies, is put 5 pennies in your pocket and just make the habit of trying to recognize and appreciate, 5 people a day and then move the pennies to the other side. And as you're doing it, pay attention to how people react. Pay attention to how you react when people recognize you. And just get in the habit of transforming that relationship, or what I like to say, adulting the relationship, to just when someone recognizes you, just get in the habit of saying thank you. And if you catch yourself doing one of those awkward things where you divert the recognition, just say, hey, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get better at accepting compliments. Thank you. And just do that and let people know. And then I think also try out reflective recognition. There's an article that I wrote in Harvard Business Review called The Better Way to Recognize Employees, and that's all about reflective recognition. And just give it a shot. Set the context and say, I know this is a little weird, but I just want to ask this question. I heard it on a podcast. I heard it in a training. And just try that in one of your next one-on-ones, or if you're a senior leader and you're walking around your facilities, hey, what's something you're working on that you're really excited about? What's some challenge you're up against? And see people's responses, and then positively probe to draw that out. And you'll see that people get lit up when you take the time to be able to connect and ask them what's most important to them.
Wonderful. Well, Chris, thank you for such an insightful conversation, and thank you for sharing such practical advice on stay conversations, recognition, building a thriving workplace culture. Where can listeners connect with you and learn more about your work?
Well, one, connect to me on LinkedIn at Christopher Littlefield. You find me on there. I got a YouTube channel. It's Beyond Thank You. Just search Christopher Littlefield, and you'll also find Chad Littlefield. He's my brother from another mother. Also great content and is a good friend of mine. We're not related at all. And then, of course, at beyondthankyou.com.
I hope this episode has provided you with valuable insights. If it has, I ask you to share it with someone who would also benefit from it. If you've been enjoying and gaining knowledge from this podcast, then subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you can find all the previous episodes of the podcast and additional learning resources. You can also subscribe to the podcast on Apple or Spotify and leave up to a 5-star review.